A student confidently asked the teacher if exams could be postponed because his brain wasn't mentally ready yet. He explained stress affects creativity and forcing exams was unfair. The class went silent. The teacher calmly said preparation already happened all semester. The student nodded like he understood, then added exams should align with emotions. He later complained education ignores mental vibes. Confidence remained strong. Logic quietly failed attendance that day. During a biology class, a student argued that humans don't need lungs if they breathe through their nose. He said air enters the body anyway, so lungs feel unnecessary. The teacher paused, then explained basic anatomy. The student shook his head, unconvinced. He said textbooks overcomplicate things. Others stared silently. He proudly wrote his answer that way in the exam. Science stayed back, disappointed and tired. A student submitted a blank assignment and confidently claimed it represented minimalist thinking. He explained words limit expression. When asked for actual answers, he said interpretation matters more than content. The teacher waited patiently, then failed the paper. The student looked shocked and said creativity isn't valued anymore. He left angry. Confidence stayed high. Effort never arrived. The blank pages remained symbolic, just not in the way he intended. During a group discussion, a student confidently said World War II happened before World War I because 2 comes first. He explained numbering can be misleading. The room froze. The teacher corrected him gently. He frowned and said history should be renamed clearly. He wrote an email suggesting improvements. Confidence never cracked. Everyone else learned silence is sometimes safer than debating logic that strong. History remained unchanged, confused but undefeated. A student confidently argued that calculators make students weaker, so he refused to use one. Instead, he guessed answers proudly. When results came back wrong, he blamed math itself. He said numbers are limiting, and teachers should accept estimates. The teacher stared quietly. He still defended his approach. Confidence stayed untouched. Accuracy left early. The test paper became a record of belief, overpowering reality, without any visible resistance. In chemistry class, a student asked why fire doesn't feel hot on pictures. He suggested heat only exists in real life, not images. When classmates laughed, he doubled down confidently. The teacher explained representation versus reality. He nodded, but said visuals should adapt. He wrote it in notes. Confidence survived ridicule. Understanding did not. The lesson moved on, leaving behind a question no one knew how to respectfully answer. A student confidently told the professor attendance shouldn't matter because learning is spiritual. He said knowledge enters naturally when ready. When failed for absences, he looked shocked. He explained spirituality doesn't follow schedules. The professor listened silently. The student left convinced the system is broken. Confidence walked with him. Responsibility stayed behind, marking registers, grading papers, and accepting it cannot compete with belief that strong. During an exam, a student confidently wrote same as previous answer for different questions. He explained answers repeat logically. When questioned, he said repetition saves time. The examiner stared. Results came back failed. He argued consistency should be rewarded. Confidence stayed high. Effort remained missing. The paper became a loop of assumptions. Learning quietly exited the room before the exam even started. A student confidently asked if homework could be skipped because he understood the vibe. He said assignments ruin intuition. When told practice matters, he smiled politely. He didn't submit work all semester. At finals, he failed badly. He blamed negative energy. Confidence stayed intact. Grades didn't. The explanation joined others in the hall of creative excuses that sound deep but explain absolutely nothing. The student confidently argued spelling doesn't matter because language evolves. He wrote essays full of errors and refused corrections. When graded low, he said teachers resist progress. He compared himself to innovators. The class listened silently. Confidence remained unshaken. Communication suffered badly. The paper read like rebellion against dictionaries. Language kept evolving elsewhere, carefully, while his marks stayed permanently behind without moving forward. A student confidently asked if he could retake an exam because the questions were unexpected. He explained he studied different things mentally. When told exams test understanding, he argued fairness means predictability. The teacher paused. The class stared. He nodded, proud of logic. Later, he complained school punishes creativity. Confidence stayed solid. Preparation never showed up. The The exam paper remained unchanged, unimpressed by feelings, excuses, or unexpected expectations. During a lecture, a student confidently raised his hand to say textbooks are outdated because Google exists. He suggested exams should be open search. When told understanding matters, he shrugged. Then why remember anything? He asked seriously. Silence followed. He leaned back, satisfied. He later failed the test and blamed memory-based education. Confidence stayed high. Knowledge quietly left the room, realizing it wasn't required where opinions felt smarter. A student confidently claimed group projects are unfair because he prefers solo thinking. Despite contributing nothing, he expected full marks. When confronted, he said leadership is invisible. Others stared. The teacher asked for evidence. He smiled confidently. You felt my influence, he replied. The group disagreed. Grades arrived. He was shocked. Confidence survived. Contribution did not. The invisible leadership failed to materialize when results became visible. In geography class, a student confidently argued maps are opinions, not facts. He said directions change depending on perspective. When corrected, he accused the teacher of close-mindedness. He drew his own map. Consonants floated randomly. He looked proud. The class stayed quiet. Confidence filled the room. The bell rang, ending a debate no one asked for, and no map survived. A student confidently asked if skipping class still counts as attendance if he thought about school at home. He explained intention matters more than presence. The teacher blinked. The student nodded like it made sense. When marked absent, he complained loudly. I was mentally there, he insisted. Confidence stayed strong. Attendance records disagreed. Reality checked in daily. He never did. During physics, a student confidently said gravity is optional if you believe strongly enough. He suggested jumping differently. When experiments failed, he blamed negativity. The teacher demonstrated laws again. He crossed his arms. Science limits belief, he said. The class exchanged looks. Confidence remained undefeated. Gravity continued working perfectly. The floor stayed reliable. His theory floated briefly, then dropped without warning. A student confidently refused to study because exams create unnecessary pressure. He said knowledge should arrive naturally. When grades came back low, he accused the system of forcing stress. The teacher calmly showed missed topics. He shrugged. I learned differently, he said. Confidence stayed high. Results stayed low. The explanation joined a growing list of reasons why effort never arrived on time. A student confidently asked if plagiarism is acceptable if he changed the font. He explained originality is visual. When told no, he looked offended. Then why fonts exist? He asked seriously. The room froze. He submitted anyway. Consequences followed. He blamed unclear rules. Confidence remained untouched. Academic integrity quietly cried somewhere in the syllabus. Realizing fonts were never meant to carry ethics. During math, a student confidently said he doesn't believe in negative numbers. He explained you can't have less than nothing. The teacher tried explaining concepts. He shook his head. Sounds fake, he replied. He skipped those questions. Failed the test. Blamed imaginary numbers. Confidence survived logic. Mathematics continued existing without his approval, completely unbothered by disbelief. A student confidently argued deadlines hurt creativity and should be flexible forever. He submitted work weeks late. When rejected, he called it unfair. Ideas need freedom, he said proudly. The teacher pointed to the syllabus. He sighed dramatically. Confidence stayed loud. Responsibility stayed silent. The assignment joined others in the late pile, where creativity waits patiently, but grades never do. One morning, a student confidently asked if failing still counts as passing emotionally. He explained grades affect feelings, and school should respect that. The teacher paused. The student nodded seriously, waiting for agreement. When told marks don't work that way, he sighed dramatically. That's outdated thinking, he said. He later told friends teachers lack empathy. Confidence stayed firm. Logic never enrolled. The grading system remained cruel, consistent, and completely uninterested in emotions. A student confidently announced he didn't need notes because memory works better without writing. He said handwriting blocks brain flow. When exams arrived, he remembered nothing. He blamed paper for distracting him. He insisted learning happened spiritually. Confidence stayed strong. Preparation stayed absent. The empty answer sheet looked peaceful. His brain remained relaxed. Education continued without adapting to theories invented 10 minutes before failure officially arrived. During history class, a student confidently confidently asked why past events matter if they're already finished. He argued history should focus on future guesses instead. When corrected, he said dwelling on the past feels negative. The room went quiet. He smiled proudly. He skipped studying, failed the exam, blamed outdated curriculum. Confidence survived timelines. Dates, facts, and reality quietly moved on without waiting for his philosophical approval or emotional readiness. A student confidently claimed group discussions are pointless because talking doesn't create knowledge. He refused to participate. When graded low, he argued silence should count as deep thinking. He defended himself passionately. Confidence peaked. Contribution stayed invisible. Others passed. He failed. He blamed communication culture. The classroom remained unchanged. Silence returned. This time from someone who realized confidence doesn't replace participation. In math class, a student confidently said formulas restrict creativity. He preferred guessing answers. When wrong, he blamed rigid numbers. The teacher explained logic. He shook his head. Math should feel free, he insisted. Confidence stayed high. Scores stayed low. The test paper showed creativity everywhere except correct answers. Numbers continued existing without permission. Freedom didn't help him calculate anything accurately that day. A student confidently asked if attendance could be counted digitally since he follows the class WhatsApp group. He explained presence is virtual now. The teacher stared. He nodded proudly. When marked absent, he argued technology isn't respected. Confidence remained strong. The register disagreed. Reality showed up daily. He didn't. Education stayed physical. Excuses stayed creative. Nothing changed except his attendance percentage dropping consistently. During science, a student confidently argued experiments fail because they don't believe in the student enough. He said trust improves results. When chemicals reacted incorrectly, he blamed negative energy. The teacher repeated steps. He crossed his arms. Confidence stayed untouched. Science stayed correct. His theory collapsed quietly. The experiment worked for everyone else. Belief alone didn't change reactions, formulas, or grades. A student confidently said homework should be optional because school already consumes energy. He explained balance matters. When he didn't submit anything all term, he expected sympathy. The teacher showed policy. He sighed loudly. Confidence stayed firm. Responsibility never arrived. He blamed burnout. Education continued. The lesson ended. His excuse joined others waiting to be believed somewhere else. In English class, a student confidently argued punctuation limits expression. He ignored commas and periods. When graded poorly, he said rules suppress creativity. The teacher explained clarity. He disagreed. Confidence stayed loud. The essay read like one long breath. Meaning disappeared. Marks followed. Language evolved elsewhere. His paper didn't. Dictionaries remained unimpressed. A student confidently said revision is unnecessary if you understand the concept once. He skipped review sessions. When confused during exams, he blamed trick questions. The teacher listened silently. He nodded proudly, convinced effort equals intelligence. Confidence stayed high. Results stayed low. Understanding left early. The exam moved on, without waiting for confidence to turn into preparation. One student confidently argued deadlines are suggestions, not rules. He submitted assignments whenever he felt inspired. When marks were deducted, he accused teachers of killing creativity. He said time pressure blocks genius. The teacher calmly showed the syllabus. He nodded, unimpressed. Confidence stayed loud. Responsibility stayed absent. Final grades arrived on schedule. His work did not. He blamed the system again. Certain brilliance was misunderstood. Everyone else passed quietly, while he explained failure was proof of misunderstood potential. Today alone, one student confidently insisted saving files was unnecessary because computers remember everything automatically. He never clicked save. During an exam, his system crashed. He stared silently. When asked, he blamed weak technology. The instructor reopened the lesson. He waved it off. Confidence survived. Data did not. His screen stayed blank. He later complained, education depends too much on machines and less on belief. The lost answers never returned, but his confidence remained perfectly backed up inside him, forever, somehow alone. In biology, a student confidently claimed sleep is optional if motivation is strong. He bragged about staying awake all night. During class, he nodded off repeatedly. When corrected, he blamed boring teaching. The teacher paused. Confidence stayed awake. His brain did not. Test scores arrived later. He argued exhaustion builds character. Results suggested otherwise. Quiet quietly, without debate. No amount of confidence could keep his eyelids open or answers correct that morning during the exam. Everyone noticed him failing silently again. A student confidently argued, exams should accept opinions instead of facts. He wrote feelings in every answer. When graded poorly, he accused the system of ignoring emotional intelligence. The examiner explained marking criteria. He shook his head. Confidence stayed firm. Marks stayed low. He left convinced truth is personal, and education simply refuses to understand it. Later, he called friends proudly, claiming failure proved he was thinking differently from everyone else, including reality, grades, rules, logic, facts, evidence, structure, expectations.